Welcome to the AI-powered inbox, where we share top tips, use cases, and news on AI's impact on lifecycle marketing and how we can all learn and to use it. On today's show is Laura Sullivan, head of brand and marketing at Inbox Monster. Laura, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Now, this episode, we are going to talk about how AI summaries and inbox extractions are shaping the email experience and what email marketers can do about it. And we're talking Apple Intelligence, we're talking Google's
Mhm.
Gemini, Microsoft Copilot, and more. Before we get into all that, tell me just your background on email marketing. How'd you get into it and where you're at now?
Absolutely. So, like everyone else, I stumbled and fell into email marketing. My background is in journalism that kind of morphed into digital reporting and then morphed into email marketing. I worked at Brightwave, which is an email marketing agency, rest in peace, and was the creative director there before going to Inbox Monsters. So I was there for almost a decade, really working on some big brands, email creative mostly.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned journalism because I have a journalism degree from Ohio State, and it was probably a similar path where
Hmm.
in school then, and maybe even now, but digital marketing wasn't really a thing. And so you got this degree, you think you might use it a little bit, and then you basically have to relearn everything as everything continues to develop and change year after year and basically teach ourselves for the most part. And now we're using our journalism in sending emails instead of writing articles.
Totally. I always say I'm a recovering journalist.
I might have to steal that. I like
Yes.
that. All right, so tell me then, a lot of things are changing. We're breaking news. Well, maybe less breaking news right now because Gmail and these email platforms and inboxes have been changing over the past year and really over the past decade. They do updates little by little, but a lot has changed over the past 12 months specifically.
Sure.
What's all happening? And give us a bit of a summary of just the changes over the past few months.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of changes happening in deliverability and different areas of email, but just thinking about the AI summaries, which is something that I've been watching closely over the last year, and they really have changed. Inbox Monster is kind of an email testing tool, so deliverability and email rendering as well. And about a year ago, we added AI summaries to our list of previews so that people can actually see, wait a minute, how is my email being summarized? So I really started following it then, and I've really seen the evolution of as the AI tools have gotten better, the summaries have changed, although there's certainly some patterns around what you can do to kind of optimize for this new reality. So for most people, they are seeing a summary before they're seeing your actual email. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not so good or not what you intended.
I'm a Gmail user.
Hmm.
I haven't used Apple Mail in years, and maybe I feel like a decade ago, Apple Mail was fine, and Gmail was doing a lot of different things. There was an app called Inbox by Gmail that I
Hmm.
really loved, and then Google discontinued it, but leveraged all the features into Gmail. But it seems like over the past couple of years, Apple Mail has really come along strong, doing a lot of features. So I'm less in tuned with Apple Mail. Walk me through a little bit of what Apple Mail maybe has done compared to Gmail or Yahoo or some of the other different mail box providers and how that's different.
Sure. I mean, as it relates to just AI summaries,
Yeah.
Apple Intelligence is basically being used in uh, the inbox on mobile in particular to summarize with a 2 or 3 sentence summary. And so that can push your message down a little bit, replace your pre-header text, and it can be helpful or it can be, a little harmful for brands if you have a little bit less control over that first snippet of your message.
Any good examples that you can share that showcase maybe the good, the bad, and the ugly?
I mean, I do have some visual examples that I can pull up. I just created one email that's my own email. But, I've seen examples of brands that their discount codes, for example, are completely mangled, or maybe sensitive information about the recipient is brought into the summary in an incorrect way. That can
Hmm.
really freak people out. So it really runs the gamut. And sometimes, it's just the wrong information is being pulled in that's not really that relevant. So, for example, your footer information, your unsubscribe links, maybe a customer service phone number is being brought into the summary, and that's really not your intention. You're trying to put that legalese down in the footer instead.
Right. There's a whole email that you want to get people to focus on. And
Right.
that that footer information is not the most relevant or not the information people want to see out of the gate. Thinking of starting to think about support or starting to think about the social media link that ideally you want to stay people away from because once, of course, people open TikTok or whatever, you aren't coming back to your email anytime soon.
Mm. Yeah. Good point. Good
So
point.
who's when you think of across like B2C, B2B, any group in particular that's more at risk to this, or is it kind of affect everyone equally?
Gemini in the Gmail inbox, and then Apple Intelligence with Apple Mail. That usually represents a big portion of a B2C sender's list. So it's really hard to know exactly what the percentage is for openers of who's being impacted. Because even if the summaries are available to those users, they might turn them off, right? I mean, not everyone loves this. And, I think there's no way to know what the exact percentage is. Something that is interesting is now with Microsoft Office, Office 365 Copilot, those are really impacting the B2B emails now. So we've got this whole new category of AI summaries that are sometimes pretty wild in our testing. They're extremely in depth, extremely long. So they're really pushing the content of the email down. So, that's a whole new turf and territory. And usually Office 365 is a pretty big portion of a B2B list.
Yeah, the idea of things being above the fold is
Mhm.
now kind of like the Wild Wild West, because I know that's such a huge element of can we get this call to action or whatever, this message above the fold so people click on it, they aren't
That's right.
scrolling. And now that is seems like taking out of our control, among other things,
Sure.
which could be impacting um, click through rates, calls to action in general. All this is kind of taking the control out of the email marketer's hands, which we didn't have much control over anyway, but it's even less so than before.
Yep. Yep. And there are some, tips and tricks that you can do to try to get your message across as you intended it. And the good news is that a lot of those are some of the best practices we've been talking about for a long time, using alt text, using live text, things like that.
Yeah, the basics and the essentials are still the basics and the essentials to as a good starting point for any email marketer.
Yep. No doubt.
All right, so let's see some of these examples. Again, the good, the bad, the ugly. Before we get to those best practices, those essentials and basics that we talk about, let's go into maybe the ugly side of things. What are
Yeah.
some of the worst
There's
examples that you've seen?
There's plenty of good fails out there to talk through. And last year, I did a little presentation at Connections, at Salesforce Connections, showing some of the fails. So I have a few of those I could pull up if we want to look at those first. They're always
Yes,
fun.
please. And no judgment. As email marketers, we know that like there's already enough anxiety when you click a button, an email goes out to potentially hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. So we already have that. So we've all been there, had our own share of fails. This is so we can just kind of like laugh about how Google and Microsoft and everyone else is kind of mangling our emails.
100%. And I'm going to show some of my fails here too. We've all been there. This is in the spirit of commiseration, I would say, as much as anything else.
Exactly.
So the first one I have here from Boring Mattresses, which is an awesome brand. Love the brand, love their brand voice. This is very unfortunate. It's 100% off sale. Everyone get excited. And obviously that was not the intention, but the wrong discount code was brought into this summary. This is Apple Intelligence. And this was a while ago. I haven't seen quite so many of these recently, but discount codes can always be troublesome. And they're really many more layers to that because if someone is picking up your discount code and never opening your email, that can also be problematic for your reporting metrics and for your re-engagement campaigns and many other things. So discount codes and other sales and things like that are their own category of failures with AI summaries.
Yeah. And I'm sure support tickets were very high after this one.
Yes, that is awful. There are some that are just funny, to be quite honest. And a lot of times it's around brand voice and trying to be clever or sarcastic or something like that can get picked up by AI in a very strange way. Or on the flip side of that, if you have an email with lots of different topics within the email, they can get spliced together in ways that are just like nonsensical or hilarious. So in this case, this is a like a GoPro camera. Someone broke into your house and stole your loot. Your Logitech, oh, sorry, it was Logitech. Your Logitech camera is expected to ship on Sunday, though. So there's good news, bad news here.
I think I had to turn off because of this fact, I had to turn off, summaries and text messages because of this, because it was splicing so many different topics. I'm like, "This is" I understand it, like, it's well-intentioned,
Yes.
but in practice, it just doesn't seem to be working well, and this is, like, example 1A and 1B.
Yep. Exactly. And there are some funny ones where it's like, penguins are going extinct, but tomorrow it's going to be 80 degrees outside. You find like these really funny and hilarious combinations. This is another one from Aura. Look, a new discount code is live, and the moon got obliterated and lost its craters.
No, not great for the Artemis II crew.
No, definitely not. So there's lots of examples of ones where it's just funny. The last kind of category of fails that I would point out are some of the really more scary ones where your sensitive info could be on the line. I've seen examples where spoofers and others are a little bit more believable because they're in this AI summary. Some of those, like, clues to phishing or other, scary things that can happen for your brand in the inbox may not be as obvious when they're brought into the AI summary. And this one, in this case, CoinSpot is basically saying, oh, your bank account details were updated. If this isn't you, just ignore this, which could be a little disconcerting. You're like, well, wait a minute. If it's not me, I should be concerned. So there's lots of examples. Again, not to poke fun at any one brand, because we've all been there. But this kind of underlines the fact that you want to try to have as much control over your AI summaries as you can. And there are some best practices for that.
Yeah, but before we get into those best practices, I do want to call out, and I'm sure we're going to get to this in a moment. But if you don't mind going back to actually that last slide,
Sure.
is that what we don't see here anymore is the subject line in the pre-header text. All of that is being replaced by the summary. And so everything we've worked hard and probably analyzed and overanalyzed and gone back and forth probably 10 times with the team
hmm
is not even showing up here anymore.
Well, in the notifications, that's true. In the inbox, you do still get the subject line. It's the pre-header that's
Mm.
being replaced. Um, but either way, that's something that as someone who's like a content person who's worked on email, you can toil over that and think about that for a long time. How do my pre-header and my subject line work together? This element of mystery that sometimes we use in subject lines, forget about that. That's out the window because your reveal is going to be right there in the AI summary. So I always say, don't throw your pre-headers out the window. Still make them informational, but don't make them essential anymore. So
Yeah, and the point of being mysterious or cheeky in the subject line is probably a little less effective now.
yes, yes, unfortunately. And that breaks my heart as like a person who loves brand and brand voice. You can't really be as cheeky or fun if you're afraid it's going to be misinterpreted.
Yeah, and especially depending on the brand. Some brands, to your point, are very cheeky and fun. Some are very straightforward,
hmm
and this kind of favors the more straightforward approach.
Yeah,
Right.
unfortunately.
Yeah. So let's get into some of those other best practices.
Sure. So, what I did, so this is constantly changing. As you can imagine, AI seems to be changing at like a, neck breaking speed all the time. So, I just kind of have been testing for the last 9 months, different emails and looking at the AI summaries. I went ahead and sent another test this morning, and this is the Inbox Monster platform. We have email previews, lots of email previews, and we also have the AI summaries here as well. And I chose an email that was my email, so we can poke fun at me, no problem. Love to do that. And I kind of chose it because it's a straight cross sell email. You can see here it's pretty straightforward. It's just calling out, like, here's 3 other products you might like to try. So it's not doing anything crazy. Um, so what I did is just test it out this morning this email 3 different ways. So I tested it with no alt tags, no live text, a bunch of images in an email. That's the first version. Bad email marketer, me. Um, and then I tried it out again with alt tags and no live text. So still the images in the email, but this one has alt tags just to see, like, will including these alt tags make a difference? Which it does. And then lastly, I did the right thing and I created an email that has live text and alt text. So it has that balance of imagery and live text. All the headlines, all the body copy, etc., are all live text, just to see if this would create a different AI summary.
Okay, so 3 versions,
Three
3
versions.
different styles. So for those that are just so used to images, maybe all images, which in general has been much less commonplace, I feel like over the past couple of years. I feel like there was a big movement to very pretty, very image driven emails. And then
Hmm.
there's been like the pendulum has swung back to much more live text, potentially no image in emails. And for this, we have 3 versions. One is all images, one is images with alt text, and then in a combo of image and live text and alt text, which is, I think, for the most part, what most emails are doing now is this version 3. But you're gonna walk us through each version and how the AI summaries are affecting each of them.
That's right. That's right. So I'll just go inbox by inbox. We can start off with Apple Mail since we were just talking about Apple Mail and just kind of see, how it's doing. So we can click into this summary and it's not quite telling the story that I would like it to tell. So this is get all relevant SMS KPIs in one simple interface, which interestingly is the first image. And that is kind of a trend that we have seen with annotations and with these summaries. Instead of picking up the first image, it will jump to the second image and choose that as the most important thing. Why? I don't know. But so this is just zeroing in on sort of not the most important idea that I wanted to zero in on. Interesting. So we can look at the same thing now with alt text. And unfortunately, in the case of Apple Intelligence, nothing changed when I added alt text. So that is a sad story, very unfortunate. And of course, I would never say, like, don't use alt text anymore. But just know that if you have images and alt text, that is your whole email, you're not going to get the full picture with
Yeah, and
Apple
it's
Intelligence.
skipping the hero image,
It's
right?
skipping the hero.
It's skipping the main topic. So not ideal at all if you're going with the main topic and then a couple of supporting things. Um, Not great for either one.
Nope, not great. Not in that circumstance. But the good news is that when we do our best practices and do our diligence, we get a lot more details here. So this is calling out the specific products that I know someone has deliverability and I'm trying to tell them about the other products they might be interested in. Um, it's doing that, calling out specifics and the main idea that's in my hero, which is we help brands land safely in the inbox. That is here in the beginning. So this just speaks to the fact that having live text and using your best practices is really going to help you, particularly in the Apple Mail inbox for sure. Um, so that's one that supports good email practices and behavior. That's awesome.
So that's Apple Intelligence. That's great.
Mm,
So
y-
reinforcing the essentials, live text, alt text, and images. So how does the other platforms and inboxes work with this email?
Sure. So let's go take a little peek at Gmail. So this is interesting. In this case, we've had, this is the image based email, and it is doing a decent job of reading the imagery and extracting information, getting any information from the imagery, which is great. But some of the language just kind of reads like gobbledygook. So, for example, my brand name is misspelled. I don't like that. That is bad. And then some of the particulars here just don't quite make sense. So, email previews program rules and SMS KPI snapshots. That doesn't really describe this email or what we do at all. So, I would say, unfortunately, like while the images were red, this turned into a little bit of gobbledygook for me. So that's the bad email.
So
So we can
Gemini
go.
tried, but
Gemini tried really hard.
and that was just the image email. Is that right? Is
That's
that the
correct.
kind of the
That's
same 3?
just the
Okay.
image based. You got it. So when we add alt text here with Gemini, what we get is a pretty big change. So with Gemini, the alt text did have a big impact. And it's not too much of a description, but at least it's not gobbledygook. At least it's actual product names. It's more descriptive. So we could definitely say that the alt text had a big impact with Gemini. Good.
It's getting there.
Getting closer. We're getting closer. And then, of course, as you might guess, second, this live text and alt text version um, is great as well. So it did a fine job. Um, so I would say Gemini, pretty good, as long as you have your alt text ready. So again, a good case for both live text and alt text for all of these.
And Gemini did a nice job of just like put into bullets, very simple, easy to read, but there's a little less here in terms of context. Seems like Apple Intelligence did bring in a little more context, while Gemini seems to favor more just clarity, straightforward, without any fluff.
Yeah, I think that's true. And I sort of find the Apple Intelligence version to be kind of the sweet spot in the middle. We're about to look at the Copilot versions, which are very long and convoluted. And, to me, this is not quite enough context to let me know, like, do I want to open this email? Do I not want to open this email? I'm not really sure. Um, but we'll see what happens when you go too far in the other direction as well.
Yeah. And before we get to the Microsoft version, Apple Intelligence, if you're using that, if I'm not mistaken, that is available for anyone using like the latest iOS. And if you're using Apple Mail, you will see that, correct?
Yes, that is correct. If you have the latest iOS and there's a certain iPhone version, I can't remember if it's 17, that you had to also have to get that latest iOS. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think the latest, if I remember the Apple news, the latest iPhone has done tons of sales. And so many people are on this
Hmm.
version of the iPhone, which of course people will see if they have Apple Mail.
That's right.
And then with Google in Gemini, you have to have a paid account, whether personal or professional. Is that correct?
This I am unsure of. I've heard from different people that say, "Oh yes, I see it." And I'm like, "Is there an experiment running for this person?" I'm not really sure. So I personally cannot get to the bottom of those details. I haven't been able to. But I know that I see them with a Google Workspace account automatically. So, and I think you know, I've heard from a lot of people who fall into that category as well.
Yeah. Okay. So I think with the Google Workspace account, if you have a certain tier and above, you guaranteed to get these features.
Hmm.
With a personal account, I can tell you, I think I get these to your point, like from time to time. I don't get it all the
Right.
time, or even my work account that isn't upgraded, at least a work account that isn't upgraded. I see these features from time to time too. So it's not a guarantee, but just like anything with Google, they are experimenting and you may or may not see it. But it seems like it's probably coming to the masses at some point as they enable more features for AI and then just, of course, get some of the kinks out.
Absolutely. And in January, Gmail did make an announcement about this kind of AI first inbox that's coming sometime in 2026. And that would take this to an entirely different level, where multiple topics, emails, etc., are all being summarized and rolled in together to create bullets, lists, to do lists, things like that. So I think getting started now with the best practices just makes so much sense, knowing that that's coming as well.
Right. I saw that video and it looks like it's turned into instead of a giant sea of emails, it's like here's the things you need to do. like you need to pay this
Mhm.
bill or need to respond back to this person to querying. If you're looking for information, it's going to be much easier to look through. So very much more of a Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT like interface versus the traditional inbox.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just so interesting to like let your mind wander on what that means as a brand marketer, as a life cycle marketer. Because you're like, okay, well, maybe I need to focus on being the most relevant I can and sending the best content I can to people who care the most about it. Because it doesn't matter where that content is, if it is relevant and useful, it's going to find them somehow. If it's not relevant, it may never find them, right? I mean,
Yeah, I think that's always been the goal, and sometimes with certain brands, they may follow it a little less or a little more, but it seems like Google is doubling down on that idea of
mhm,
if you send an email to this person and if they don't engage whatsoever, it's more likely than not they will not see your email at all, which they've tried to do to a certain degree with like the promotions tab and things like
promotions,
that. We
right?
know if you go
Mhm.
in there, which there's a role for that, all the random promos and things I get from oftentimes e-commerce brands or stuff in general, that's going into that tab. But if I engage with a certain product, I'll likely see that. But if not, it's going to get lost in the thousands of promotional emails a person gets on a monthly basis.
Absolutely. And we, just speaking about the promotions tab, what we haven't talked about here is annotations. And, in the promotions tab specifically, there are brand cards that are going to bring in discount codes, imagery, all sorts of things from a promotional email. And those are also happening automatically in many cases. So, what we always, advise people to do is to take back control of those annotations by using a schema markup. You can control what's being pulled in. So that's like a whole other topic and category of discussion that we could get into.
All right, so annotations, as you mentioned, is like a whole separate beast. Let's put a pin in that for just a second. Let's finish off. Let's check out Microsoft Copilot and how emails show in there.
Sure, absolutely. So we've just started tracking this Copilot, and it's very prolific in its summary. I'm like, this is not much of a summary here. This is more content than my actual email had in it. So yes,
People don't like
Copilot.
to people I always say people don't like to read all that much. Emails are built for skimming, and this is making it almost worse than it is.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. And in this case, this is my bad email with no alt text and imagery, etc. But what Copilot has brought in based on my imagery is what I would categorize as marketing gobbledygook. It doesn't really make sense. It certainly doesn't reflect our brand voice. It's not accurate to what our tool does. It's just like centralized reporting of KPIs covered in diagnostic tools and rule based program monitoring.
My eyes are glazing over as you're reading that. No one would wanna read that.
Nobody wants to read that. Copilot is a little problematic. And just to go back to what I was saying before, so those who have Office 365, which is a lot of B2B um, people that are probably on your list if you're a B2B marketer, this is starting to get problematic for them as well. Um, so there's my bad email. Let's see what happens with some alt text with
Hopefully
Microsoft
better than that.
Copilot. It is a little better. We have a little bit more organization in the content, which is great. But I would still categorize a lot of this as gobbly language that I wouldn't necessarily use in my emails. It also brings in a lot of my footer information. So social links and unsubscribe options, not helping people open my email in any
Yeah.
way, shape, or form.
For those that are listening in the audio version, these are just long paragraphs that we know, especially in email, people are generally aren't going to read.
Yep, that
And
perfectly
longer than the
describes.
paragraphs that are actually in the email itself, to your point earlier.
Exactly. But there is a silver lining here as well. And that is if we do the good work of using alt text and using live text, this becomes so much more readable. So in this version, there are bolded words that can kind of serve as that guidepost for the skimmers, which we know everyone is. And the language is a lot more clear. It's actually language that we might use. So creative projects, those are email previews, collaboration, and diagnostics. Okay, I can kind of understand what that is. Um, so this is another case where following those best practices does help dramatically. However, this is still a very heavy amount of summary to see before you see an email.
Yeah, there's still quite a bit here, obviously much better. But I do want to call out the couple things right below that is that Copilot then tries to continue the conversation and asks, what are the main offerings? Explain the SMS deliverability tool. So it's trying to continue the conversation with the reader to explain this a little bit more. Just like any AI tool at this point, seems like they're trying to reinforce engagement with it.
Which is kind of interesting, right? Can someone have a conversation with your email? Not
Hmm.
really a question that I've asked myself before. I've seen some of them where like it just basically says like, okay, what's the TLDR for this big, long block of text? So maybe that is useful to go a level deeper.
Yeah, it kind of shows and it continues to show that email, like everything else, is changing and that's why we're here, trying to figure out how to play catch up and figure out what we can do about it.
Yeah,
All right.
no doubt.
So long story short with these, it sounds like the common thread, live text, images, and alt text, all the above help enhance the experience across Copilot, Gemini, and of course Apple Intelligence. Is that right?
That's true. I think, I mean, that I think has been totally proven in this case. Um, I will say there's some other takeaways that I could definitely get into, having looked at a lot of these. I think what we talked about earlier about brand voice and clarity is really important. I think that the emails, if I do say so, were very clear. They had some fun, punchy copy in this email example. All of that was completely washed out here. So, I think just kind of knowing for your brands that maybe email is not your channel to totally dial up the brand voice. Maybe you should lean on the side of clarity in this channel, really clear CTAs, really clear headlines, concise body copy that says just what you want it to, and that can get you a lot more than, unfortunately, punchy headline or a joke in the headline that might have grabbed attention before. I also think that this email has multiple topics. That's kind of what I wanted to test out. And I think, what I see here is if you really have an important email that you want people to zero in on the right topic, maybe you should just stick to one topic per email. Consider, I know what happens with email in my world and lots of people's worlds is you get lots of people saying like, "Oh, can you send an email about this?" And you may be tempted to just roll it all up into one message and kind of stick some things in a secondary or tertiary. And in this case, maybe that's not the best idea.
Yeah,
So,
that's kind of like classic roundup or product update.
mhm,
Or in this case, seems like a great product adoption email. Hey, you got started. Here are some advanced features that you may have not gotten into. We're getting like one main thing. We're not getting the rest of it. And depending on how it's being showcased and how it may be showcased a month from now or 6 months from now, starting to get a little clunky and things are being woven together.
mhm, mhm. And then, of course, something that we talked about, just going back to the best practices, is the AI fold. And I always put my fighting words on when people talk about the fold because I'm like, this is digital media. There is no fold. If there's good content, people will scroll, and I'll continue to get into heated discussions about that. But in this case, wow, there really is a lot of space before someone is getting into your email. So is that something that we want to think about? In this case, I did not put an image at the top of my email. I got right into the content. Um, it might be something to consider for people.
Yeah, especially from more of like a B2B brand. I feel like you see that much more.
Hmm.
B2C is you got to get that visual in there. At least that's traditionally how it's been. So people may need to kind of rethink their approach along the way.
Hmm.
Are there any other kind of common threads people can take away from this?
One, entirely other dimension that we haven't talked about is just how these summaries could impact your engagement numbers, your deliverability numbers. So just kind of other aspects of your email performance. If your summary is really great, maybe someone doesn't want to open your email. Maybe they're like, oh yeah, I forgot I'm not using that feature. I'm going to go do that. Or, oh, I forgot they were having this sale. I'm going to go directly to the website and start shopping. And if that happens, you're not seeing who's getting that brand impression from you. Um, and that could impact all sorts of things downstream, right? It can impact your approach to engagement, your approach to re-engagement. So suddenly some of these key metrics get a little bit murkier.
Yeah, open rates were already murky to begin with over the past couple of years, and now it's even more
Sure.
so. What's the best way to measure that, to work around that?
For re-engagement in particular, we always recommend continuously re-engaging. Don't wait until right before Black Friday, for example. We see this very often and say, oh, I'm going to run a re-engagement campaign. I want to see who's really interested in getting my communications. Make that an always on sort of ongoing thing that you're doing is re-engaging. And then you'll get a better picture of, who really wants to be on your list, who wants to be engaging with your
Yeah,
content.
it's leveraging those cues, especially inside the app, inside the product, inside your e-commerce store that are
Everywhere.
becoming much more important.
Hmm.
I think another way to a great way to do it is leveraging control groups more. I know I'm seeing
Mm-hmm.
that with some of my clients where we're doing a holdout group of say
Hold out.
10%, 20%, and then you're seeing the impact because as you mentioned, someone may not need to open the email. And this goes back years, even not just now, but now it's even more so where they see that discount code. Great. They're going to go directly to that website. And so you can see the impact of that email, impact of the sale, impact of the product update by leveraging control or a holdout group and measuring the impact between these 10% didn't get it and they converted what 2% of the time. These
Mhm.
90% did get it and they converted 8% of the time. You can see that lift by leveraging, I think, those a bit more, which may be more powerful during this newer age of AI summaries and extraction and annotations and things like that.
Mhm. Yep, that's really smart.
Let's talk annotations.
Yes.
We teased a little bit earlier. It's becoming I know I'm seeing it much more in especially in the promotions tab, and when they started coming out, I was like, "How are these people doing this? How are they showcasing all these, like, discount codes and images?" So if you aren't familiar, annotations help give you that sneak peek before even opening an email,
Mhm.
much more, and it seems I feel like a bit random of who has it, who doesn't, but walk us through a little bit of, like, what this looks like.
Absolutely. So I just pulled up an example, probably seen these in your Gmail promotions tabs. Basically, bringing in an image, bringing in a CTA, discount codes or sales. So there's a lot of great information you can bring in to really tease the email. And as you can imagine with B2C at retail, this is huge. What we have seen is that the annotations can also happen automatically. So in that case, you are not really getting that much control. And when I did the test earlier and showed the second image being pulled in, we've seen a ton of these annotations bringing in the second image. And sometimes that's random. It's like a shop front, store locator or something that is definitely not what you intended. So you can use a markup, a schema markup to control what's being brought into the annotation. So this is one way that you can kind of get back control from AI as well.
Yeah, a lot more functionality seems like is being continued to be brought in generally a good way. I think this is a really big positive for email marketers if they're leveraging this.
Hmm.
We will link to how to do this in the show notes. So if you want to learn more about annotations, go ahead and click in the show notes and we'll have that in there.
I am by no means an expert in how to actually do it, but I've worked with really smart people who have, and it's amazing.
Yes, I feel like I work with really smart email developers that make what we do very pretty and function very, very well. We can
Yes.
do some of it. I think like every email marketer can do at least some. And it's like,
Hmm.
are we fortunate to work with someone potentially smarter than us that can do really the heavy lifting?
Heck yeah.
All right. So from what I've seen so far, AI change in the inbox, we have AI summaries.
Hmm.
We're seeing the pre-header especially being swapped out and sometimes the subject line in the notification itself.
Hmm.
Live text, if it wasn't essential before, is even essential now or more essential now. Context in the email itself is being pushed down due to these AI summaries. So if you're really focused on above the fold and believe there is a fold. This is more important. This is more important than it's been. And then leveraging these other features like annotations to bring more context to the email even before the open.
That's
Any
good.
other best practices we missed?
Test everything. That's always my best practice. I mean, like, as someone who sends email myself and works with lots of people who send way more than me, of course, you couldn't imagine sending out an email without testing it. And so I think testing the AI summaries is also super important. And because, as we see, like, your Gmail doesn't have summaries and mine does, because it is a little bit random, I think, using a tool like Inbox Monster or any tool that you can get your hands on truly to test the summaries. It's going to hopefully become more of the gold standard, so that people get a sense of really how their emails being interpreted.
Yeah. Test, test, and test again. These
Mhm.
features are changing on a monthly basis, it seems like, with everything else in technology. And we need to continuously test and see how things are. All
100%.
right, Laura, let's move on to the lightning round. Last couple questions before we get you out of here. I asked this for everyone so far. What's an email trend that you think is overrated or underrated?
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I'm going to maybe contradict some of what I said, but I have seen this movement toward more undesigned emails more and more. As you were saying, like, there used to be all these beautiful image based emails. And then we've kind of swung the other direction and really gone for sort of function over form. And I maybe call me nostalgic, but I still think great designed brand emails are super important. And so I don't know. I always feel like it's a missed opportunity when I see just a completely undesigned email. I think there's a way to do both, to follow the best practices and really have this beautiful brand impression that everybody wants to have. So that's just me.
I think I'm there with you. There's a time and place, and I always say like test it. If it works for your brand, great.
Sure.
But I
Sure.
do think having that mix of both, the Goldilocks of a beautiful designed email with live text and things like that, and sometimes it can be very simple, sometimes it can be complex. But
Hmm.
having those images are very important. Show, don't tell. People more likely to like things visually than to read extensively. But of course, every brand's different. Test what works for your brand.
Of course. Of course.
All right. So, what AI tool have you been using lately? Anything that just has really stuck out that you've enjoyed,
Yeah.
whether for professional or personal use?
Well, okay, I'll be boring and give you a professional example, but it was just a recent, like, oh, wow, this is great. So I am transitioning to customer.io from another sending platform. And so I'm trying to onboard myself. And I have all these weird random questions and trying to like get all my templates lined up and etc. And I've been using the AI tool within the Knowledge Center for customer.io, and it's been awesome. So I've really been able to like get that done super fast because of it. So shout out to them. That was a really good tool.
Yeah. Shout out to Customer IO. I would agree. I've used several ESPs over the past decade plus, and Customer IO has quickly become one of the best. I think they're doing an amazing job.
Yeah, and they just made some big announcements about AI within their product itself that I can't wait to play with.
Yeah, same. All right, second to last question, I think. Don't hold me to it. What is your current binge? Any favorite TV show, podcast, book? Any favorites recently?
So I've just recently been binging a show called Imperfect Women. It just gets more complicated with each episode. It's like Kerry Washington. Anyways, that's what I've been binging lately. I think it's on Apple TV.
Okay, that is on the list. We haven't started. Is it good? So you recommend it?
It is. With each episode, it literally gets more like nuanced and complicated. It's very good. Murder
All right,
mystery,
I'm
but in
here
a
for it.
totally new way. Yeah.
I like it. And then let's see. Last one for you. My wife and I were debating this the other day.
Hmm.
Sliced bread came out 100 years ago.
Hmm.
19, I think I saw it when I looked it up, 1928. What has been the best thing since sliced bread? What's been the best thing in the last 98 years?
So, I mean, I've been watching this really cheesy history of food on the History Channel with my son, and
Interesting.
they taught it. There was one all about sliced bread, and another episode talked about sliced cheese and the invention that Kraft came up with to individually wrap it so that it could be sliced, and how that changed everyone's lunches, and the sandwich became an invention right about there. So
So
I think that's interesting.
sliced cheese was the best thing since sliced bread.
I
It's
don't
funny you say that.
necessarily.
It's funny you say that because that was the exact thing I said to my wife. I'm like, one, I think sliced bread is overrated, but
Yes.
two, How many other things have been sliced since then that
Exactly.
are now underappreciated because of the sliced bread, like sliced cheese or something else?
No, I'm sure there are a million way more important things than that. But
Probably the internet, and I'm blanking on now, but a million others. And again, we're space theme a little bit. We've landed on the moon allegedly, and that's probably
allegedly,
that's probably been a pretty big deal. Okay, Laura, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it. This has been great. We've been keeping up on all the updates to Gmail, into Microsoft, into Apple Intelligence, and I'm sure there's going to be plenty more along the way. How do we follow you? How do we stay on top of all this?
the best way to keep up with me is to follow Inbox Monster on LinkedIn or follow me on LinkedIn. I'm usually talking about all this jazz, and that's where you'll most often find me talking about it. So yeah, LinkedIn. And you could always, of course, go to inboxmonster.com and check out our blog. We update it frequently and we have a lot of great information there.
All right. Well, follow Laura, check out Inbox Monster, and thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on the pod.
Thank you.